Hi everyone, my name is Amber and this is my August wrap up. I have already recorded this video once but it didn't save on my camera, which is really quite annoying, and now we're in a different location because I'm in the middle of moving house and all of my bookshelves are being packed away. Here we go again for the second time. I read 18 books in August, which I am really pleased with. That's really good for me. I'm not going to do my statistics in this video because I think it's going to take too long, so I'm just going to get straight into the books. The first ones I'm going to mention are the 4 graphic novels that I read. Yes, that does mean that I read 14 full books in August, which again, amazing. So I read the 4 last Lock and Key books because I started rereading the series in July and really enjoyed it for the second time, so I thought I would finish it off. The first one I read is book 3, which is Crown of Shadows. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's not my favourite of the series, but still really good. Keys to the Kingdom, the 4th book. Again, this one was 3.5 stars. It wasn't the best one in the series. Clockworks, which I gave 4 to 4.5 stars. I love this one so much. It gets me very emotional. The final one, Alpha and Omega, which I gave 4.5 stars, I believe. This is obviously the finale. I'm not going to say much about it, but I love it. It's very emotional, it's very dark, and it's a fantastic series. I would highly recommend picking it up. In case you don't know already, Lock and Key is a horror graphic novel series. It's about these children whose father is murdered and they go to live with their uncle in the key house. This key house has a bunch of doors and keys that they can find, and the keys let them do different things. Like it turns them into giants or into animals or into ghosts. It's just a really well thought out series, very dark and gruesome, so I'd be careful before going in, but it's very, very good. The next books I read are all books for ARC August. I read 6 books in total, which I'm really happy with. I would have liked to have gotten some more since 6 is obviously only a third of my reading, and I was hoping to have at least half of my reading be advanced readers copies, but it wasn't. I am trying again in September though, so hopefully that will get better. The first one I read is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. I love that my camera recognises this face every time. This is YA fantasy. It's a Little Mermaid retelling, but it's not actually about the Little Mermaid, it's about Ursula and her origin story. It's about a girl called Evie whose best friend Anna drowned, and Evie is struggling a bit, as you would, and then one day a girl appears on shore who looks just like her friend Anna. I quite enjoyed this one. I have to say that the beginning was quite slow, but the ending really picked up, and because of the ending I'm tempted to read the sequel, even though I don't think the sequel follows on from this. I gave this one 3 stars because it wasn't amazing, but I did enjoy it, and I guess I would almost give it 3.5 for that ending, but the beginning dragged so much for me that I couldn't in good conscience rate it higher. In case you're wondering why I'm speaking so slowly, I'm recovering from a cold or some sort of weird illness. This video is just a bit of a mess. It would have all worked out if my camera hadn't deleted my original video. I then read What She Found in the Woods by Josephine Angelini. This one is a YA thriller. I don't really know how much to tell you without spoiling the plot because there's no blurb on the back. So I'm just going to say that it's about a girl who just comes out of hospital and she goes to stay with her grandparents for the summer, and her grandparents live near the woods. The main character, whose name I can't remember, goes into the woods and finds people there who are living off the land, but they're living there in secret. And then back in the town, women are being killed or going missing. So the main character has to figure out what's going on there. I have to say, I didn't love this one. It took a long time to get into it. I rated it 3 stars. I think the pacing definitely could have been improved. However, I did quite like the ending. It definitely all picked up from there, which is what you always want in a thriller. And then I read a 1-star review copy, which I felt a bit bad about, but it was so damn awful that I don't really care anymore, and that is Here There Are Monsters. This one is kind of contemporary magical realism, almost paranormal fantasy. It's hard to explain. So it's about a girl called Sky whose sister goes missing when they move to a new town, and Sky is convinced that the monsters have taken her sister, but obviously no one really believes that because that sounds silly. I thought that the writing style in this was awful. The characters were absolutely horrendous people and didn't really have any redeeming qualities. Honestly, I don't really know why Sky wanted to go and find her sister because she was a brat. And then I also didn't like the relationships, so nothing about this book appealed to me at all. It took me forever to get through it, and it's such a tiny book, so I wouldn't recommend this one. I gave it 1 star. Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This one is very hyped up and I was really looking forward to it, even though I don't normally do weird books, but I probably shouldn't have picked it up because it wasn't great. I did win this though, so I couldn't really help reading it. I gave this one 2.5 stars because I feel like, again, this is another one where it was boring in the beginning and then it started to pick up. However, the ending was not great for me because it sort of ended out of nowhere. It's possibly being set up for a sequel, but everyone's insisting that this is a standalone, so I don't know if the publisher was waiting to see if it did well before greenlighting the sequel, or if the author just wanted to end it that way because that's the kind of vibe she was going for. This is about girls who are on an island at a boarding school, and this weird virus or bacterial infection, we're not sure what it is at the beginning, has ravished the island, and the girls start developing weird ailments. One of the main character's eyes is swollen shut and another one is growing scales. So it's all weird things like that, and then the government isn't really helping and the girls are very isolated. It's been compared to Lord of the Flies. I don't agree with that at all, having read Lord of the Flies recently. It was just not a very well executed book and I was quite disappointed by it. The Smoke Thieves by Sally Green. This is YA fantasy. It's a very chunky book, but nothing actually happened in it, so I gave it 2 stars. As you can tell, my arc August didn't go brilliantly. This follows the points of view of 5 characters, which I believe is too many, and they spend a lot of time travelling to one another. Princess Catherine, one of the main people, is being married off and she goes to the kingdom that her betrothed lives in. So all of the other characters sort of start to gather around her, or around that same area rather, and they all spend a lot of time travelling, and this is meant to be about demon smoke, which is why it's called the Smoke Thieves. They hunt and extract the smoke from demons. But the smoke was relevant for a couple of chapters in the beginning, and then again towards the end. This middle bit is a whole chunk of nothing and it was so boring. It took me forever to get through this one as well. It was way too long and there were too many points of view. A lot of them were irrelevant, and the romance between Catherine and Ambrose was just the most boring, dull thing. There was no chemistry there whatsoever, so I'm kind of hoping she goes with the other guy. If there even is another guy at this point, who knows. And then the last book I read for Arc August was Suggested Reading, which comes out in September. I gave this one 2 stars. It was very boring, to be honest. So it's a YA contemporary about a girl called Clara who starts her own underground library at school because books are being banned from the school library, which I thought sounded like a really interesting idea, a really good premise for a bookworm to read about. But it was so boring and Clara's thought process was so strange, and also she loved Catcher in the Rye and I just could not connect with her because of that. She kept blabbing on about all of these like classic books that everyone adored and like changed her life, but she didn't mention any more modern ones, and that really got to me because she came across as a book snob rather than a bookworm. So needless to say, I didn't enjoy that one either, which is a shame. I then read a couple of Ruth Ware books, which I will talk about mostly in another video that's coming up, but I will mention them here because obviously I did read them in August. The first one is In a Dark Dark Wood, which is her first debut book. I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's an adult thriller like all of her books. It's about a group of women who are friends at school and they all come together for one woman's bachelorette party, and they go and stay in a cabin in the woods, and then creepy things start to happen. That's probably all I'm going to say about the plot because I don't really want to give anything away. I thought it was creepy. It was very well written for a debut. While I did figure out what was going on, it was still a fun process to follow along and see what was happening. I really enjoyed it and would recommend it. Her second book, however, is The Women in Cabin 10, which is probably her most hyped up book, I would say, and I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars, I think. Let me just double check. 2.5 stars, but maybe I was being generous. This is about a woman who goes on a cruise on a luxury yacht because she's there to advertise the cruise and get people to want to go on it. The first night she is there, she sees a body fall into the water from a balcony and she reports it, but then people tell her that she couldn't have seen that because there was no woman in cabin 10. So this kicks off a whole saga and the main character goes around telling everyone what she saw and asking them questions over and over again. It just gets a bit silly. So first of all, I thought that the writing style was very clunky. It was also very repetitive, and then the main character was doing silly things, which I do talk about again in another video that's coming up, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But I just thought the whole thing was ridiculous, and then at the end there were a few things that didn't make sense, so that was disappointing. I am very disappointed in this. I listened to 2 audiobooks, the first one being The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. I gave this one 3 stars. It was quite interesting. The subject matter was very interesting, rather, because I love to learn about dinosaurs. However, the audiobook was not great, so I've given it 3 stars because of that. I didn't really like the narrator for this one. I thought he sort of spoke very slowly and drawled, and it was just not that engaging to listen to. I had to listen to it on 2x speed while I was driving, and normally while I'm driving I'll listen to audiobooks a lot more slowly so I can focus on what's going on. However, this one I had to speed up because it was so slow. I also thought that the author spoke too much about himself and his friends, his paleontology friends, rather than talking about the dinosaurs. So that was a bit sad. I wanted to learn more about the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, like from beginning to end. But I guess because very little is known about where they came from, there wasn't too much to say, so he had to bulk it out by talking about his friends and how they discovered the dinosaurs. The second audiobook I listened to was The Mystery of the Exploding Teeth. I gave this one 2 stars. I did enjoy some of the books that I read in August, I promise. This one is non-fiction. It's about medical ailments from the past. So the author looked into medical journals and researched weird cases. And I say research, he didn't really, he could have researched it, but yeah. So he talks about, for example, people who swallowed knives and then the knives only become a problem 20 to 30 years later, and then the exploding teeth case, for example. I thought that the audiobook was very boring to listen to. It's just the narrator and the author listing off these medical cases, like reading them out loud, and then not really providing much commentary, and then the commentary they did provide was just the odd like quip that was meant to be funny but wasn't. I would have preferred more science to be involved, so maybe he could have researched the cases more, looked into similar cases. It wasn't very well done, and I was quite disappointed. Another thriller that I read was The Wife Between Us. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. This is about a woman who is divorcing her husband, her very rich husband, and he has a new fiance, and the woman who is divorcing her husband wants to warn the new woman away from him. Is it because of her own personal jealousy, or is it for legitimate reasons? I'm not going to tell you. I thought it was a very interesting book to read about. It struck me quite close to home at some points. There is some domestic abuse in there. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I saw the twist coming as usual because I read so bloody much, but I did really enjoy this book and I'd highly recommend it. Pulp by Robin Talley. This is YA contemporary. It's about 2 women, Abby and Janet. Abby lives in the present day, Janet lives in the 1950s, and both are gay. This is obviously a problem for Janet in the 1950s because things were not so great then. So Janet kind of dealt with that by reading and writing pulp fiction, in secret of course, and then in the present day Abby is reading Janet's pulp fiction and is a massive fan, so she's doing a research paper into that. I thought this was a really good book. I did have problems telling the 2 voices apart at times. I only really could tell when Janet was doing 1950s things and Abby was doing modern day things like using a mobile phone. What I did like though was how much I learned about LGBTQ rights in the 1950s. It was very interesting to learn about. I've never really learned about the issues that were going on in the USA during the 1950s. So that was very interesting and it has made me want to learn more. But because I didn't really connect to either of the characters and the writing style was all a bit bland, I did give this one only 3 stars. China Rich Girlfriend by Kevin Kwan, I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is the sequel to Crazy Rich Asians, which I read last year, I believe, and really enjoyed it. This is just the same. It's a ton of drama, and I loved seeing more of Astrid and her relationship with Michael, even though I freaking hate Michael, but I love Astrid so much. And it got more and more ridiculous. I think this is more ridiculous than the first one. We did get to see more of Rachel and Nick, which I really enjoyed because I wasn't expecting that, because I had heard this one was mainly focused on Astrid, but instead it was focused on the whole cast, and that was really nice because I really like all of these characters, even though they're so ridiculous and up themselves, but kind of like it. And finally, I read The Poppy War, which I gave 5 stars. It's my book of the month. I'm doing a giveaway on Twitter and on my blog, so you have 2 chances to win the book if you go and check those out. I absolutely adored this book. It's currently away in a box somewhere because, again, I'm packing to move, but this one was incredible. It's about a girl called Rin who goes to a military academy and she's training there, and then her country has tensions building with the neighbouring country, and then Rin has to basically go to war, and it's honestly one of the best books I've ever read. I can't wait to read The Dragon Republic, but at the same time I'm kind of scared because The Poppy War was so dark. It took a lot out of me, but it was so well written and Rin is a fantastic character. I'm not too sure about how I feel about what she did towards the end there, because that was some crazy stuff. That's partly why I'm hesitating to read The Dragon Republic, because I'm not sure how I feel about that, and I don't know how Rebecca Kwong is going to write Rin after she's done that, so I'm kind of cautious, but at the same time the Poppy War is absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend it. Do go in knowing that it's very dark and grim, and check out the trigger warnings on the author's website. Those are all the books that I read in August. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sorry it was kind of low energy. My other one was better, but it got deleted, so I'm a bit disappointed about that. But we fixed the situation now, I'm back. Thank you so much for watching my video. I'll speak to you all in my next one. Bye!